My name is Maya, and until recently, I believed I had everything figured out. I had a best friend I trusted like a sister, a quiet home, and a love that made the world feel soft and safe. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, familiar and dependable. Anita and I met in the fourth grade, and from the moment we bonded over a shared notebook, we became inseparable. Where I was impulsive and loud, Anita was calm and observant. Her presence balanced mine. People often mistook us for sisters, not just because we looked alike, but because we knew each other's hearts. Our teenage years only drew us closer. She spent weekends at my house, laughing with me over silly jokes and sharing secrets under the covers. My father, a reserved man with strict routines, rarely engaged in our world. He was a well-respected teacher in our community, stern, composed, and seemingly uninterested in anything beyond his books and evening tea. Anita admired him, often saying, "He's so disciplined. I wish my father were like that." I never knew how to respond. As we stepped into college, new chapters began to open. That's when I met Rohan. He was charming, not in the way that demanded attention, but in the way that made you want to know more. Our conversation started in the library, books bridging the gap between strangers, and soon bloomed into long walks and subtle glances across the lecture hall. It wasn't long before I fell for him. Hard. Anita was the first person I told. I still remember the sparkle in her eyes as I shyly confessed my feelings one lazy afternoon. She grinned and teased, "Maya in love? This I have to see." She quickly became our confidant, the keeper of secret meeting spots, the decoy during curfews. Rohan and I trusted her without question. One Friday evening, as summer edged in, I had to visit my aunt for the weekend. She wasn't well and my mother insisted I go. I hesitated, reluctant to leave the comfort of home, and Rohan, but Anita offered to help. "Don't worry," she said with a smile. "I'll drop by your place tomorrow and feed your cat. You just focus on your aunt." It felt good knowing she'd be there, even if I couldn't be. That's how much I trusted her, how much I believed in the safety of my world. As I boarded the bus that night, I looked back at the life I was leaving for 2 short days. My heart was full, wrapped in the warmth of love, friendship, and routine. I had no idea everything I believed to be secure was already beginning to crumble. The silence that would follow, unspoken, shattering, was something I never saw coming. Anita arrived at my house the next evening, just as she had promised. The sun had dipped low, casting a warm, orange hue across the porch. She carried a small bag of snacks, some treats for my cat, and her usual gentleness. She had always felt comfortable in our home, until that day. The house was quiet when she let herself in with the spare key. My mother was still at work, and as expected, only my father was home. He sat in the living room, a cup of tea balanced in his hand, flipping through an old newspaper. "Oh, Anita," he said, looking up with a neutral expression. "You're here for Maya's cat?" She nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes, sir. She asked me to stop by." "Good girl," he replied. "Have some tea before you go." It seemed like a harmless invitation. After all, he had always been formal, distant. Never affectionate, never unkind. Anita hesitated, then sat politely on the edge of the armchair. But something felt off. The air grew heavier with each passing minute. His questions became personal, too personal. He asked about her family, her relationship status, her time alone at college. Anita laughed nervously, trying to steer the conversation back to neutral ground. Then he got up. He sat too close. Anita's heart pounded in her chest as instincts screamed at her to leave. She stood abruptly, mumbling something about the cat being fed already, her voice tight with discomfort. But he blocked her path. Not violently, just deliberately. Like he wanted to make her feel small, afraid. She backed away and begged for space, her words laced with panic. He didn't shout, didn't hit. His cruelty wore the mask of calm control. That made it worse. That made it terrifying. She managed to push past him and ran out the front door, her breath catching in her throat. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with her phone, unsure of what to do, who to call. She couldn't call me. I was away. She couldn't go to the police. What would she even say? How could she prove anything? That night, Anita didn't sleep. When I returned the next day, I noticed the change instantly. Her eyes, once steady and kind, now darted nervously. Her words were short, her smile forced. I asked if everything was okay, but she brushed me off. Later, she came to my room, silent. Her hands were cold. When she finally spoke, her voice broke with each word. She told me everything, every detail, every moment, every feeling of powerlessness and fear. I didn't know what to say. Shock consumed me. My world, once steady and predictable, felt as though it had been pulled out from beneath me. I wanted to scream, to deny, to rewind time. But there was no going back. Nothing would ever be the same again. And deep inside, I knew the truth had only begun to unravel. I confronted my father the next morning, my voice shaking but firm. Anita's words still echoed in my head, raw and heavy. I wanted answers. No, I needed them. He sat at the dining table, peeling an orange with deliberate calm, as if the world hadn't shifted overnight. When I demanded to know what happened, he looked up slowly, his face unreadable. "She's confused," he said flatly. "I think she misunderstood my kindness." My stomach twisted. His words sounded rehearsed, hollow. I stared at him, searching for any trace of remorse, but found none. Just that same cold detachment I'd mistaken for discipline all my life. "You think she misunderstood you blocking her way to the door?" I snapped, my voice rising. "She couldn't breathe, Baba. She was terrified." He didn't respond. He just went back to his orange, indifferent. That silence shattered something inside me. For days after, I avoided being home unless I had to. My mother noticed my distance but chalked it up to stress. I couldn't tell her, not yet. I wasn't sure she'd believe me, or worse, she might try to justify him too. Meanwhile, Anita withdrew completely. She stopped answering my calls, skipped lectures, and unfollowed me on social media. I tried reaching her through mutual friends, but she kept her distance. The girl who once laughed at my terrible jokes and helped me write love notes to Rohan now treated me like a stranger. And I couldn't blame her. I had brought her into my home. I had unknowingly exposed her to a man who betrayed every definition of trust. The weight of that guilt pressed down on me until it felt hard to breathe. Rohan tried to be there for me. He held me when I cried, listened without judgment, and told me I wasn't responsible. But part of me didn't believe him. My loyalty had always been to my family, yet now, that loyalty felt like a prison. One evening, I finally saw Anita again. She stood at the edge of the college courtyard, alone, clutching a notebook to her chest. I approached her slowly, unsure if I had the right. When our eyes met, hers were full of tears, not of anger, but of exhaustion. "I thought you believed me," she whispered. "I do," I said, voice trembling. "I always did." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Then why did you stay silent?" There was no answer I could give her that would make it right. We stood there for a moment. Two friends broken by something neither of us caused, yet both of us carried. She turned and walked away, and I didn't stop her. I couldn't. That night, I realized betrayal doesn't always come with a warning. Sometimes it grows in silence, in avoidance, in fear. And mine was only just beginning to unravel. Days turned to weeks, and the silence between Anita and me deepened into a canyon neither of us could cross. She eventually transferred to another college without saying goodbye. I learned about it from a classmate who mentioned it casually, unaware that her words shattered something final in me. Rohan became my only anchor. His love was patient, but he struggled to understand the depth of my guilt. "You did what you could," he'd say gently, wrapping his arms around me. But what could I do when the wound wasn't mine to fix, and the person I hurt had already walked away? I wanted to scream the truth, to expose my father, to bring him to justice, but the fear of destroying my mother, the shame, the societal whispers that would follow, they all froze me. We lived in a world where such truths are often met with denial, where girls are told to forget and move on. But how could Anita forget? How could I? One night, I found a note tucked inside a book Anita had once gifted me. I must have overlooked it during all the chaos. Her handwriting was familiar, looping, soft. Maya, if you ever read this, know that I didn't hate you. I just couldn't bear the silence. Some wounds scream louder when no one listens. I hope one day you'll speak, even if I'm not there to hear it. I broke down. That single page held more forgiveness than I deserved and more courage than I had shown. So, I made a decision. I sat down with my mother and told her everything. Every detail, every moment Anita had shared. I braced myself for denial, for anger. But what I saw instead was pain, deep, wounded pain. She didn't cry. She simply nodded, stood up, and walked out of the room. A week later, she left my father. It wasn't a dramatic departure, no shouting, no scene. Just a suitcase by the door and a firm goodbye. She told him she didn't need a court to tell her what her heart already knew. For the first time in months, I felt a sliver of light. Rohan stood by me through it all. Our love was no longer about stolen kisses and late-night texts. It had grown into something stronger. A quiet resilience. A bond built not only on affection but also on surviving something deeply human and horribly unfair. Anita never came back into my life, but her impact remained. I wrote to her once, a long letter filled with apologies and gratitude. I never received a reply, but maybe she didn't need to answer. Maybe knowing I finally spoke was enough. I tell this story now not for sympathy, but for the truth. Because betrayal is not just an act. It's a silence, a hesitation, a failure to act when it matters most. And sometimes, healing begins the moment you break that silence.